The Great Flood, a story told across civilizations. Since the earliest days of human history, civilizations across the world have told the same story. A great flood, an unstoppable force of nature that wiped out nearly all life, leaving only a chosen few to begin the world anew. The Sumerians spoke of Ziusudra, a wise king warned by the gods to build a massive boat before the flood came. The Babylonians had a similar tale in the Epic of Gilgamesh, where Utnapishtim survived a divine storm that drowned the earth. In ancient Greece, the story was passed down through the myth of Deucalion and Pyrrha, the last surviving humans who repopulated the world after Zeus unleashed a catastrophic deluge. Across the oceans, the Hindu legend of Manu describes a great sage who was saved by a divine fish, guiding his boat through the rising waters. In Mesoamerica, the Maya tell of a great flood that destroyed the first humans, forcing the gods to create a new race. In Norse mythology, the flood came as part of Ragnarok, the end of the world and the beginning of a new era. And of course, in the Abrahamic religions, the flood is a divine judgment, with Noah building an ark to preserve life before the waters consumed everything. The details differ, different names, different gods, different reasons, but the essence remains the same: a great flood, destruction, survival, and rebirth. Was this a shared memory of a real event, or simply a common theme in human storytelling? What we do know is this: the story of the Great Flood has been passed down for thousands of years, shaping myths, religions, and cultures across the world. And today we explore each of these ancient tales, uncovering how different civilizations told the same story in their own way. This is the story of the Great Flood. The Great Flood Sumerian and Akkadian version. Long before the legends of Noah's Ark, before the myths of Deucalion and Pyrrha, there was an even older tale of a great flood, one that emerged from the heart of Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization. The Sumerians and later the Akkadians told one of the earliest recorded flood myths, a story that would echo across time, influencing countless civilizations that followed. This ancient tale is found in the Epic of Ziusudra and later in the Atrahasis Epic, two of the world's oldest literary works. It is a story of divine wrath, survival, and rebirth, one that predates even the Epic of Gilgamesh, the wrath of the gods. In the time of the Sumerians, the gods ruled over the world, each with their own domain. The supreme god Enlil, the ruler of wind and storms, watched over humanity. But as time passed, humans multiplied, and with them came noise, laughter, shouting, music, the endless sound of civilization. The gods, disturbed by the chaos, found it unbearable. Enlil, the great and powerful, decided to silence humanity forever. He devised a plan to wipe them from existence, a flood that would cover the earth, swallowing cities, temples, and fields beneath the raging waters. But not all gods agreed with this cruel punishment. Enki, the god of wisdom and creation, could not stand to see the world he helped shape be destroyed so easily. In secret, he chose a single man, Ziusudra, a righteous king who honored the gods and ruled his people with wisdom. A warning: in the dark one night, as the world slept, Enki whispered a warning to Ziusudra through the reeds of his temple. The message was clear: a great flood is coming. The gods have decreed the end of mankind. If you wish to survive, you must build a vessel large enough to save yourself, your family, and all living creatures. Ziusudra, shaken by the divine message, obeyed without hesitation. He constructed a massive boat, sealing it with pitch and reinforcing its walls. Unlike later flood myths, there were no detailed instructions, no measurements, no lists of animals, only a simple command: build or perish. As he worked, the sky darkened, the winds howled, and the air grew heavy with the coming storm. Soon the rains began, soft at first, then turning into an unrelenting downpour. Rivers overflowed, and the great city of Shuruppak, the home of Ziusudra, began to sink beneath the waters. The flood and the divine test. For 7 days and 7 nights, the flood raged, covering the earth. The gods watched in silence as the world was swallowed by the waters, their once beloved cities vanishing beneath the waves. Humanity, their creation, was no more. Inside his ark, Ziusudra prayed as the storm raged around him. When the waters finally calmed, his boat came to rest atop a great mountain, though the name of this mountain is lost to time. Emerging from the ark, Ziusudra offered sacrifices to the gods, hoping to appease their wrath. And in that moment, something unexpected happened. The gods regretted their decision. They realized the magnitude of their destruction and lamented the loss of humanity. Enlil, though angered by the defiance of Ziusudra's survival, ultimately relented. As a reward for his faith and obedience, Ziusudra was granted immortality, taken to live among the gods, never to suffer the fate of mortals again. He became the first of the flood survivors in recorded history, a legend that would later be reshaped by the Babylonians, the Hebrews, and civilizations far beyond Mesopotamia. A story that echoes through time. The story of Ziusudra and the Great Flood is among the oldest flood myths ever recorded. It predates the story of Noah, shares themes with the Epic of Gilgamesh, and even influenced later Akkadian versions like Atrahasis, where the hero was given the name we know today. Was this simply a story, a warning about the wrath of the gods, or was it inspired by real events, perhaps a massive flood in ancient Mesopotamia? We may never know for sure, but what we do know is this: the story of a great flood did not end here. It traveled through time, across civilizations, reshaping itself in the myths of Babylon, Greece, India, and beyond. And next we follow its journey into one of the most famous flood myths of all time, the Babylonian legend of Utnapishtim, as told in the Epic of Gilgamesh. The story of the Great Flood may have started with the Sumerians, but the Babylonians took the legend and reshaped it, adding new details, new gods, and a new purpose. While both versions tell of a catastrophic flood sent by the gods, there are important differences in how events unfolded. In the Sumerian version, the flood was caused by the gods being disturbed by the noise of humanity, and this idea was carried over into later versions. But in the Babylonian story, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, the gods decided to destroy mankind not just because they were noisy, but because they were too many, too demanding, and too defiant. The Sumerians called the chosen one Ziusudra. He was a righteous king who was warned by the god Enki. However, the Babylonians renamed him Utnapishtim, portraying him as a wise man from the city of Shuruppak. Unlike the Sumerian hero, Utnapishtim was not a ruler. He was chosen to survive because of his loyalty and wisdom. One of the major differences between the two stories lies in the ark itself. The Sumerian version gives few details about the construction of the ark, but the Babylonian ark was very different. It was described as a huge cube with equal sides, built to withstand the chaos of the storm. In the Sumerian story, the flood lasted 7 days and 7 nights and covered the land with divine fury. But the Babylonian flood was more destructive, lasted longer, and was so violent that even the gods feared the devastation it unleashed. In the Sumerian version, the gods were mostly silent observers, except for Enki, who helped Ziusudra. In the Babylonian version, the gods themselves were horrified by the scale of the destruction. The goddess Ishtar lamented the loss of humanity, while the other gods shriveled in horror, realizing that they had gone too far. In both versions, the ark eventually comes to rest on a mountain, but in the Babylonian story, the mountain is called Nimish, and Utnapishtim releases birds to test whether the floodwaters have receded. First, he sends a dove, then a swallow, and finally a raven. When the raven does not return, he realizes that the earth has dried up. This version of the Great Flood has become one of the most influential flood stories in history. It was passed down through Mesopotamian culture, influencing later versions such as the biblical story of Noah and even the Greek legend of Deucalion and Pyrrha. The story has remained essentially the same: a great flood, a chosen survivor, divine intervention. But the details have changed, evolving with each civilization that inherited it. We then turn to another ancient flood story told by the Greeks, in which the gods sent a deluge not only to punish humanity, but to wipe it out completely. In ancient Greece, the Great Flood was not just a punishment, it was a complete reset, a divine act to erase a corrupt humanity and start anew. This was the will of Zeus, the ruler of the gods, who looked down upon the world and saw that mankind had become wicked beyond redemption. Determined to cleanse the earth, Zeus summoned an unstoppable deluge, a flood that would sweep away the sins of humanity. The rain fell in relentless sheets, rivers swelled, and the land was swallowed by water. Cities crumbled, forests vanished, and all of civilization was lost beneath the waves. But one man and one woman were spared. Deucalion, the son of Prometheus, and his wife Pyrrha were the only two deemed worthy of survival. Prometheus, the titan who had once gifted fire to mankind, foresaw the coming disaster and warned his son. Acting quickly, Deucalion and Pyrrha built a chest, a floating refuge, strong enough to endure the raging waters. For 9 days and 9 nights they drifted across the endless sea, until their vessel finally came to rest upon Mount Parnassus. As the storm cleared, they emerged into a world wiped clean of life, a silent, empty land where they were the last of their kind. Faced with an uninhabited earth, they turned to the goddess Themis for guidance. She revealed a cryptic prophecy: "Cast the bones of your mother behind you." At first, they did not understand, but soon they realized that the mother was Gaia, the earth itself, and her bones were stones. Following the divine instructions, Deucalion and Pyrrha began picking up stones and casting them behind their backs. As the stones hit the ground, they miraculously transformed, men rising from those thrown by Deucalion, and women emerging from those cast by Pyrrha. Thus, a new humanity was born, formed not from flesh and blood, but from the very earth itself. This was the rebirth of mankind, a second chance granted by the gods, but one with a reminder: civilization could be erased just as easily as it had begun. In ancient Hindu texts, there is the story of a great flood, not as a punishment, but as a test of wisdom, patience, and divine guidance. This is the story of Manu, the first man, the one chosen to preserve life when the world was destined to be consumed by water. Manu was no ordinary man. He was a righteous sage, a leader dedicated to truth and sacred duty. One day, while purifying himself in a river, something unexpected happened. A tiny fish swam up to his hands and spoke in a voice like no other. "Manu, take care of me, and one day I will save you." Manu, realizing the divine nature of this creature, protected it and placed it in a small jar. But the fish grew and grew, so much so that Manu had to move it first to a pond, then to a lake, and finally to the vast ocean. It was then that the fish revealed its true identity. It was Matsya, an incarnation of Vishnu, the supreme protector of the universe. "A great flood will come, Manu. It will consume everything. You must prepare a boat and collect the seeds of life, so that all will not be lost when the waters rise." Manu obeyed without question. He gathered plants, animals, and wise sages to build a large boat to preserve the knowledge of the world. As foretold, the rains began, and flood waters engulfed the land, covering mountains and forests alike. But as Matsya had promised, the great fish returned, now huge and powerful, safely guiding Manu's boat through the chaos. The flood continued for days until the waters finally began to recede. When the boat stopped at the summit of a sacred mountain, Manu stepped onto dry land and offered prayers to the gods, making a great sacrifice. In return, he was blessed, and from him, a new age of humanity was born. Manu thus became the father of a new humanity, chosen not for power or might, but for his wisdom and devotion to the divine. What makes this story unique? Unlike many other flood legends, the Hindu version does not speak of divine wrath. Instead, it speaks of a cycle, a flood that cleanses but also paves the way for renewal. The survivor is not just a chosen man, but a wise and righteous sage, guided by divine power, not by destruction, but by protection. And so, as this legend has been passed down through the generations, it has carried with it a message. Disaster is not always a punishment. Sometimes it is a test, and through wisdom we can find our way forward. Unlike other flood myths that speak of divine punishment or renewal, the Norse version is not just about survival, it is about the end of an era and the birth of a new world. This is the tale of Ragnarok, the final battle of the gods, where fire and ice collide, and even the heavens tremble. In the prophecy of Ragnarok, chaos unfolds as the world spirals toward destruction. The sun and moon are devoured by monstrous wolves, plunging the world into darkness. The great serpent Jormungandr, which had been coiled around Midgard, rises from the sea, bringing massive waves and poisoning the sky. The earth shakes, mountains crumble, and the sea surges over the land. But this is not a typical flood. It is a wave of chaos and destruction, unlike anything the world has seen before. The very fabric of reality unravels as the final battle between gods and giants begins. As the great gods fall, Odin slain by Fenrir, Thor poisoned by Jormungandr, and Loki locked in his final struggle, the world is consumed by fire, smoke, and water. The flood does not come from the heavens, but from the breaking of the world itself. The seas rise, drowning the remnants of civilization, while flames scorch everything that remains. But not all is lost. Two humans, Leif and Lifthrasir, survive by hiding deep within the branches of Yggdrasil, the World Tree. As the floodwaters and flames consume Midgard, these two remain untouched, protected by the sacred tree itself. They do not escape by building an ark, nor do they flee to a mountain. They survive by waiting, by enduring, by outlasting the end of days. When the battle is over and the flood has washed away the old world, something incredible happens. The earth begins to rise again. From the waters, a new land emerges, green and untouched. The sun, long thought to be lost, is reborn in the form of a new sun, the daughter of the old one. Leif and Lifthrasir step into this new world, the last survivors of Ragnarok. From them, a new humanity will rise, starting once more in a world that has been purified by fire and water. This is what makes the Norse flood story unique. It is not just a cleansing, not just a punishment. It is the destruction of everything, so that something new can take its place. In the ancient beliefs of the Maya civilization, the Great Flood was not simply a disaster, it was a divine reset, a cleansing of the world before the creation of a new race of humans. This story, preserved in the Popol Vuh, the sacred book of the Maya, tells of the gods' failed attempts to create humanity and the floods that wiped away their mistakes. At the dawn of time, the mighty heart of sky, also known as Hurakan, ruled over the heavens. Alongside him were the great creator gods, Tepo and Gukumats, who sought to create beings who could worship them and honor the sacred balance of the universe. Their first attempt was with mud, shaping weak and fragile figures. But these beings were soft, unable to stand, and lacked intelligence. They could not speak, they could not praise the gods, and they crumbled into nothing. Dissatisfied, the gods let them perish, washed away by rain and time. Their second attempt was more ambitious. They carved humans from wood, stronger and more durable. These wooden people could walk, talk, and multiply, yet they lacked souls, gratitude, and hearts. They were cold and empty, failing to acknowledge their divine creators. The gods, enraged by this failure, decided to destroy them. The sky darkened, the winds howled, and the gods unleashed a terrifying flood, washing away the wooden people. But the flood was not the only punishment. Their own creations turned against them. Their houses collapsed, trapping them inside. Their dogs and turkeys attacked them, biting and clawing at their flesh, as if in revenge. Even their grinding stones and cooking pots came to life, beating them as punishment for their soulless existence. The flood swallowed the world, cleansing the earth of the soulless wooden people, leaving behind only a few survivors who fled into the forests, cursed to become monkeys, forever doomed to wander the trees as a reminder of the gods' failed creation. After the Great Flood, the gods tried once more. this time using sacred maize, the lifeblood of the Maya people. These new beings made from corn were strong, wise, and filled with gratitude. They honored the gods, spoke with wisdom, and respected the world around them. At last, the gods were satisfied. The true humans had been born. What makes this story unique? Unlike many other flood myths, the Mayan flood was not about punishment for sins, but about divine trial and error. The gods experimented, and when their creations failed, they erased them with a flood, making way for something better. This story also reflects the deep spiritual connection between the Maya and maize. Their staple crop was seen as the essence of life itself. And so, in the Mayan tradition, humanity was not saved by an ark or a mountain, but by being worthy of existence. From the whispered myths of the Sumerians to the sacred texts of the Mayans to the fiery rebirth of Ragnarok, the Great Flood has been a thread that has been woven continuously through the stories of humanity. Whether it's punishment, renewal, or divine experiment, each story speaks to something deeper: our fragility, our resilience, and our place in the vast, untamed forces of the world. These myths weren't just stories to pass the time. They were warnings, lessons, and reflections of the fears and hopes of ancient civilizations. The waters may have receded, but their echoes remain. Perhaps the real message of these flood myths isn't the destruction itself, but the survival that follows. No matter how great the storm, there's always something left behind to start over. Don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love if you liked them. Thanks for watching.